Good afternoon, grinders. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And this is your NBA SimLabs analysis for March 17th. We got a 10-game slate on the docket today. A lot of games that are later in the night. We only got one 7:30 p.m. Eastern game. Then we got 1, 2, 3, 8 o'clocks, then a 9 o'clock, then a whole bunch of 10 o'clock games. I think a 10:30 game also. So the injury report is gonna mean a lot more today than it will on other days. So make sure you get those late swaps in. Plan for the future. We got a big injury report. We got Zion Williamson questionable. We got Tyrese Halliburton questionable. We got Jokic questionable. Curry questionable. We got Miles Turner questionable. Josh Giddey is doubtful. Bradley Beal is doubtful. Jamal Murray is questionable. We got John Collins is doubtful. We got so many people on the injury report today. But definitely tune in to Grinders Live later today, 5 o'clock Eastern, 6:30 p.m. is crunch time for all your updated news. Who's in, who's out, who to play if this guy is in, who to play if that guy is out. We have all the stuff for you here in our projections. We have our updated projections multiple times throughout the day, even past lock. So if someone gets ruled out, if we see, Jokic is out for whatever reason, we don't know that information before 10 o'clock, and we get it at 9:45. Our stuff gets updated here at RotoGrinders within 5 minutes max, and it'll reflect the Jokic being in, Jokic being out, everything like that. Remember, our projections take all the questionable players and keep them in. The doubtful players are out. But like I said, they update throughout the day. And you can see here, SimLabs also updates throughout the day. So you should be using this much closer to lock once we get all the info in. So we got a big game, big slate today, 10 games. I first like taking a look at, optimal versus projected ownership. And are just generally who like the top plays of the day. I think Cade Cunningham against the Pelicans. The Pistons have, let's see, 120-point implied team total, 9,800 at point guard. Luka without LeBron at 12K if you're going to pay up. Jokic is 13K. We have him at a pretty low optimal rate, paying up that much. I'm not sure how much like screaming value there is at this point. There's plenty of cheaper plays that are I guess, salary adjusted plus minus a little couple of points above the norm. We got like Draymond Green at 5,900, Trey Jones 5,900, Pippen Jr. 4,700, Keldon Johnson's there, I guess. Tyus Jones. We got a lot of guys like in the 5K, 4K range, like Klingon and Mathurin. I see here like the small forward position doesn't look to be all that strong today. I think that's bumping up the ownership of Benedict Mathurin. So we have him at -5 optimal versus projected. So that means that his ownership is 5 percentage points, 5.6 percentage points higher than his optimal rate. And we have his optimal rate at 19%, which is pretty good, which is actually pretty good for a 10-game slate with a lot of options. So we have his ownership at closer to 25%. So he's a little bit overowned, but he's not a bad play, right? 19% optimal. Compared to Jokic, for instance, like Jokic is not going to be very owned today. We have him at 6% owned, but his optimal rate is about 5%. So much lower than some other players on the slate. Our highest optimal rate players today that are over 30%, Cade Cunningham, Kobe White, and Draymond Green. And you see this recurring theme in SimLabs that to get players in this like 6 to 8K range that could give you 50 plus points are a lot more valuable than guys like Luka at 12K who really need like 70, 80 points, especially on a 10-game slate, to give you a GPP winning score, because a lot of times you have to fill in, cheaper players that, some 3,500 guy gets 20 points. It's just not a lot of raw points in comparison. You have to make it up with the high-priced guy. So looking at small forward, so Benedict Mathurin, a little bit overowned, but still not bad with his optimal rate. At point guard, We've Trey Jones as over-owned. We have him at 26% projected owned, 20% optimal. So that isn't 20% optimal is pretty damn high. So even though he is a little bit over-owned, just like we have Cade Cunningham here, 4.5% over-owned. But we have his projected ownership at like 36%. We have his optimal rate at like 31%. So he's one of, if not the highest chances of being optimal at 31%. And even though he may be like 36, 37% owned, it doesn't mean that you should necessarily just X him out. It's kind of like the guys that, let's see, let's take a look here. Power forward. Denny Advija. Let's see Denny. Denny is his optimal rate is 13%. And we have him at 18% owned. But it's primarily due, as of right now, as of 1 o'clock in the afternoon, primarily because this small forward position is not all that strong. I guess Kobe White fills that spot a lot. He's shooting guard and small forward eligible. So he's going to be able to fit into 5 spots in your lineup, right? You got the shooting guard, you got the guard utility, you got the small forward, the forward utility, and the main utility. So Kobe White may actually be a little bit higher owned than we predict as of now. Maybe guys like Keldon Johnson, maybe a little higher owned. We have him at 21% owned, but 24% to be optimal at 5K. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at what shows up. I'm going to put 150 in a large field contest with a low results range. And on a larger slate, maybe I don't want to necessarily get into like the high end results like that. Basically, with a lot of outliers, like that's essentially what the results range does for you in SimLabs. And when it's like a smaller slate, like 3 or 4 game slate, maybe you want to encompass like even like the 9th guy on a team, the 10th guy on the team, stuff like that. Just because there aren't as many options. But on a 10-game slate, I don't necessarily think we need to get into like the 80th highest projected play on the slate. So even though there will be some lineups that have those guys in that are plus EV, maybe I want to keep the results range pretty low. So let's see what happens. I'll put in 150. And I'm using this for research purposes. Even if you're building 1, 2, 3 lineups today, doesn't mean you can't just run 150 and start, saving some, looking at the constructions between these, and just getting a general sense of, what higher EV lineups have, what players are in them. And you see 150, it took me 7-8 seconds to run. I go over to the exposures tab just to see who comes up the most. So we get, a lot of Cade Cunningham, Draymond Green, Kobe White, Keldon Johnson, Kevin Huerter, Scottie Pippen, right? Johnny Juzang. Okay, I guess from the small forward position, let's take a look at his optimal rate. 19%. Okay, not that bad. Okay. Against the Utah-Chicago game. I think the Utah-Chicago game probably has a good bit of value on it because it's a 240.5 implied total, and especially with Josh Giddey out, this game may actually be closer, even though it's not like the Jazz want to win. But yeah, I see a lot of Bulls here, Bulls, Jazz. Even I guess Draymond Green. It doesn't necessarily matter if Steph Curry is in or is he out. They have 120.5 implied total. Denver 116. So this is a pretty high total game also. Let's see. We got Isaiah Collier there. Yeah, okay. Karl Anthony Towns. Let's talk about Karl Anthony Towns. He comes up a ton. We have him, if we go to the dashboard again, we have him as the most under-owned player on the slate as of right now. Obviously, this is all as of right now. In, out, people on the injury report, they're questionable, they're out, they're questionable, they're in. Everything could change. But Karl Anthony Towns we have as 9% under-owned. And we have his ownership at, let's see, his ownership is 11%, but about 19% to be optimal, which is pretty good. 10K center, like a lot of people are not going to be playing that type of construction, right? With the 10K center, they're much more likely to pay up for like a Cade Cunningham at point guard or a Luka or let's see, what other high price? Steph Curry if he's in, right? Halliburton if he's in, Devin Booker maybe a little bit, or maybe not. Okay, no, he doesn't have a high optimal rate. So maybe we flip the construction a bit and we include Karl Anthony Towns. It's not a high total game, right? 108.5 implied total for the Knicks, but we have him projected for 35 minutes, and it should be a close game. And that rotation is pretty damn tight, especially with no Brunson, I guess. Yeah, so a lot of the offense is going to go through Karl Anthony Towns. So let's lock him in. All right, we have Karl Anthony Towns, and let's see. I'm going to put up 20 lineups, and let's see what these Karl Anthony Towns lineups look like. Because it's not about the players; it's about the lineups. So if we're going to be playing Karl Anthony Towns under-owned, we could get away with playing some of these, like maybe these semi-chalky small forwards, like Mathurin, right, or Keldon Johnson. Like, I don't mind this lineup that much, right? Yeah, this first lineup, 90.6 in SimLabs. We got Jared Butler. Like, yeah, we got no one that's single-digit owned, right? Karl Anthony Towns, we still have 10% owned. He's the lowest owned player in the lineup. So you have Butler, White, Mathurin, Green, Towns, Jazang, Keldon Johnson, Nikola Vucevic. So you get that White, Vucevic, Jazang in as like a correlation, I guess. Is there ones? Let's see. Let's go to exposures. Let's see. Draymond Green's in a lot of them. Kobe White's in a lot of them. Who's Jared Butler? I guess is not. I guess Jared Butler is kind of like a little bit of a contrarian play in this lineup. We don't get that much Cade Cunningham. Obviously, we're playing Karl Anthony Towns, but we are getting a lot of Draymond Green and Kobe White. Probably. I would say Kobe White. 30% chance to be optimal. Draymond Green, 31% chance to be optimal. Cade Cunningham. I think maybe in this type of lineup with Karl Anthony Towns, we should be playing 2 of Cunningham, White, and Green, right? Because we're making up the leverage with Karl Anthony Towns. And we don't mind a guy like Keldon Johnson. So let's keep Keldon Johnson in. We have him at 24% chance to be optimal. So let's keep him in. And remember, if you don't want to play Karl Anthony Towns, just exclude him and just take a lineup that doesn't have him. I mean, it's not about players, it's about lineups. If you're going to play 3 lineups, you could say, okay, I'm going to play 1 Karl Anthony Towns lineup and 2 non-Karl Anthony Towns lineups. Well, let SimLabs do that work for you and go, well, let me select ones that have Towns but no this. Let me select ones that have this guy but no Towns. So I think it's perfectly fine. Let's keep Keldon Johnson in. Let's keep Keldon Johnson in this lineup. We get a lot of Vucevic here. Here's the one with Cade Cunningham in it. So if we choose not to play like Kobe White, right? We have Cade Cunningham here with no Bulls, right? So here's one with 3 Bulls in it, right? So you have Trey Jones, Kobe White, Kevin Huerter, and then we get Draymond Green, Benedict Mathurin. We have no Keldon Johnson. Then we get like Tobias Harris at 5,800 against the Pels. We get Orlando Robinson, who's now up to 5K against the Suns. I mean, this isn't that bad either. I mean, all these lineups rate pretty much the same. Right? Here's a Steph Curry lineup. Here's ones like weird, right? You get Collier, Gillespie, White, Anunoby at 1.7% owned at 7K. Right? This is a lot more contrarian. Like this lineup 6 out of 20. This is a lot more contrarian, right? Even though you are playing some chalkier pieces in here. So you can choose to play whichever ones that you want. So I'm looking through this one with Scoot Henderson. I don't mind the Isaiah Collier. If you're not going to play Cade Cunningham, let's take a look. How owned in comparison? So we have him at about 18% optimal and 13% projected owned. So he's under owned. And I think if you play Kobe White in your lineup, I think it's perfectly fine to play Jazz in your lineup. I think like Juzang. So let's try to look at that combination. So we want Collier, Juzang, and Kobe White. So let's not necessarily prioritize Keldon Johnson, right? So we want Towns, and we want this kind of correlation of Kobe White on the Bulls and then Collier and Juzang from the Jazz. And let's see what lineups look like that. I'm assuming we're going to get a couple, right? If you do this, if you do a combination and you end up getting lineups that have like red bars and stuff like that, SimLabs is basically telling you, don't play those lineups. Okay, so we got plenty of line. I mean, look at all these lineups rated in the 80s. I mean, this is a popular combination. Let's add Keldon Johnson to it also. Let's see what we get now. This is a way that you could select if you're playing one lineup. You could use SimLabs just like this. And now it's looking for this combination of 5 players and what the rest of the lineup looks like. Right, this one has like Colin Gillespie in it. This one has Cade Cunningham, but basically no Draymond Green. Right, this one has 3 Jazz in it. Right, so let's say can we use Draymond Green instead? Towns, Johnson, White, Jazane, Jordan Poole at 5%. Here's a Draymond Green lineup, but this one has some Portland in it, which may be a little bit off the board. 118.5 implied point total. I don't think that's that bad to play. You know, Collier, White, Jazang, Green, Towns, Henderson, Klingon, and Johnson. Like this lineup isn't bad. I could save this lineup. It doesn't mean I have to play it. Just I could save it. This looks pretty good. All right, we go here. Here's one with Kobe White, Trey Jones, and Vizelis at 2.7%. You're going to play a lot of the Bulls Jazz game, and Collier, Jazang, Keldon Johnson, Towns, and Jalen Duren at 6,800, who isn't that bad either. Like all these lineups look pretty good, right? We don't necessarily have to play Keldon Johnson. Let's see minus Keldon Johnson. Let's save another lineup. Right, we got Chet Pagney in this one. Right, I think I'd much rather play Keldon Johnson, I think, than Chet Pagney today. Right, like this lineup isn't that bad. Even if you want to play a 3K Colin Gillespie, I mean, you need to, not a big fan of playing like 3K players necessarily. Let's take a look at Gillespie. Gillespie, yeah, we have his optimal rate at 8% and his projected owned at 8%. Right, so he's purely like a punt play. Yeah, maybe pass on him. You got Mathurin line up here with 3 Jazz. We got 2 Jazz. We got a Jordan Goodwin lineup. I mean, this isn't all that bad, right? We got Collier, Jazang, White, Jones. And then we got Karl-Anthony Towns, Draymond Green, Klingon, and Jordan Goodwin. Jordan Goodwin at 4,900. We have his optimal rate at close to 14%. And he's going to be about 14% owned. So he's there. He's there in your lineup. I don't mind this lineup either. Right? We could go here. And these are like the Karl-Anthony Towns lineup. So let's say you wanted to play a lineup that still had the same combo of like Collier, Jazang, and White, but no Karl-Anthony Towns. So I could go down there, exclude Karl-Anthony Towns, and let's see what these lineups look like. Well, this lineup, I'm assuming, is going to have Cade Cunningham. So we're probably going to play a Cade Cunningham lineup. Here we go. Here, yeah, the first one. The first one that comes up. Right? So Cunningham, Herter, White, Green, Vucevic, Collier, Jazang, Tyus Jones. This is perfectly fine. This rate's out in the 90s. Right? Here's another Cade Cunningham lineup. Miles Turner, who's questionable today, in it as well. Here's another Cade Cunningham. Here's one Cunningham, White, Jazang, Johnson, Duren, Collier, Aaron Gordon, Draymond Green. Now, I mean, the whole thing with the Nuggets is that like their whole team's on the injury report. So it's quite possible that one of these Nuggets guys actually, ends up with good value if like Jokic is out or something. But I think with so many of those with Murray on the injury report, with them then like all questionable, I think we're going to find that information out before lock, or at least before the 9 o'clock games. But you can plan ahead for that. So like we take a look at these 9 o'clock games, these 10 o'clock games. This Warriors Nuggets game is going to be the biggest one as far as news is concerned. But there's plenty of other. The thing is that there's 1, 2, 3. There's 4 other games that are 10 o'clock forward. That worst case scenario, you have stuff to swap to. So this may be the type of slate where you're trying to play more later players, which means I think even like someone like Karl-Anthony Towns will be even lower owned. So I think a lot of the field is going to just like push everything as far back as they possibly can. So yeah, let's keep this first lineup with Herter, White, Vucevic, Cade Cunningham, Draymond Green, Collier. We're basically stacked. We got 5 guys from the Bulls Jazz game, and let's see if we take out Karl-Anthony Towns, and what other combination did we necessarily want? Let's look at save lineups. I mean, we can see the save lineups here, right? We got Draymond Green in all of them, right? We're playing this little, Chicago, Utah kind of combination. Uh, yeah. Yeah, these look pretty good, right? 94, 87, 85 rated in SimLabs. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, you could fool around with this a lot more later in the day once we get a lot more news. But according to Where Sims, as a conclusion, an overall wrap up, is that we have Karl Anthony Towns as underowned relative to his projected ownership, when he may actually be lower owned than that. I'm not saying he's going to have a good game. I'm just saying that compared to his range of outcomes, the field is not going to own him enough. And a lot of the chalkier players are not necessarily like bad. There's like bad chalk, like someone that's egregiously overowned. Like, even though Cade Cunningham is going to be like chalky, like he deserves to be chalky. He's a little bit overowned, right? We have Kobe White as a little bit overowned. We have Draymond Green a little bit over, like a little bit, but not that much, right? Like someone like Trey Jones is a little bit more overowned. Someone like even like Keldon Johnson. Like Keldon Johnson is underowned. Benedict Mathurin is a little bit overowned. But I think you're gonna still have to play some type of small forward that is just like in the 4K range. That's where we have like Johnny Juzang in there at 3,600. And he's gonna be 21% owned. And his optimal rate is like 20%. So I mean, at 3,600 to get a guy that has like a 20% optimal rate, that's pretty good. But like all of them are kind of in that range. So maybe it's a good thing that we have multiple guys that could fill the small forward position that are cheap, and they may not necessarily cannibalize one another. So it may be possible that the ownership gets spread out, that you can play any of them. But I would be on the lookout if like one of these guys, if like someone like Shag Pagney or Johnson or Herter or Jazang or whoever ends up being like overwhelmingly being more chosen, then it's better to probably play one of the other guys. So I think that may end up. See, it's hard to tell. I don't know if it's going to be Keldon Johnson. I don't know if it's going to be Mathurin. If Halliburton's out, then it's probably going to be Mathurin, right? I would think so. But then you could just play Keldon Johnson and you're fine. And Keldon Johnson, I mean, that's the last game on the entire slate. So you have a lot of swap options then. Probably the best thing is that if you're going with a 50-50 decision today, choose the guy that's in the later game, because maybe we'll get some news. But you could use all of this SimLabs. It's pretty easy. I show it on the screen all the time. $29.99, part of the combo light package. Get full access to SimLabs for all the four major sports: NFL, NBA, MLB, and PGA. You get Court IQ, you get Plate IQ, you get Weather Edge, you get all of our consensus value rankings, our expert surveys, all of our premium written content, and it's for one low price for the four major sports. I think it's way too cheap. So go check it out. Click on that link in the description, or go to rotogrinders.com/premium, and I'll be back tomorrow. We got some NCAA stuff, I guess, to talk about tomorrow. But I'll be back later in the week. We got some more NBA. MLB will be coming up soon, so you'll see some SimLabs video for MLB, which may be a little bit better because there isn't as much chaos in MLB. Right, worst thing that happens is like, oh, guys isn't batting sixth, he's batting eighth. Right, NBA. I mean, look at this injury report. Look at this. Look at how many people impact rating 10 that are either out, doubtful, questionable. So definitely check in to the channel later today for more news. Hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here, and hit the notification bell to know when we go live. And that has been your NBA SimLabs analysis for Monday, March 17th on RotoGrinders.com.